I think what it would look like for you is that I would be curious about where you're at. I would want to know where you see yourself going. And it's more of I'm not going to solve your problems, right? But I'm going to help you to figure out how to solve your problems by yourself. Because one of the things I know about people is that, I've raised 5 sons. And I have lots of things to tell them. I can give them all kinds of advice. But when I tell them what to do, then I own it, right? Whereas if we can talk about the pathway and how you're going to get to the next step and what are the things you need to do and what, similar to the questions you were asking me, who are the people that are going to help you?
Welcome to Career Coaching Secrets, the podcast where we talk with successful career coaches on how they built their success and the hard lessons they learned along the way. My name is Davis Nguyen, and I'm the founder of Purple Circle, where we help career coaches scale their business to $100,000 years, $100,000 months, and even $100,000 weeks. Before Purple Circle, I've grown several 7- and 8-figure career coaching businesses myself, and have been a consultant at 2 career coaching businesses that are doing over $100 million each. Whether you're an established coach or building your practice for the first time, you'll discover the secrets to elevating your coaching business.
Welcome to Career Coaching Secrets Podcast. I'm Pedro, and today's guest is Dr. Nancy Arduengo, an organization development consultant and principal at the Ardland Group LLC, specializing in strategic change management and workforce alignment. She partners with leaders across industries to help teams navigate complex transitions, resolve conflict, and build collaborative cultures that support organizational goals. With extensive experience designing high-impact organizational interventions, Dr. Arduengo helps companies maintain productivity and morale during periods of change by aligning leadership, teams, and mission-critical objectives to drive sustainable results. Welcome to the show, Nancy.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you. And I know we were talking about the origin story in the pre-podcast session we were just having, and I like to rewind a bit. Always, get back to that. Because every coach has that moment where they look at their life and say, yeah, I guess this is what I'm doing now. Right? So when was that for you?
Well, I think it falls into like 2 categories because my younger sister passed away very sadly at a young age. She was only 45. And she was one of the, I would say any employer would be happy to have her working for them because she was so curious and learning and, just made everything really wonderful. And unfortunately, she had changed her hours and when she passed away, she didn't have any life insurance, which we all thought she had. And it's not really about the money as much as it is about I felt that her organization failed her and I wanted to be an advocate for employees, help them to find their voice and help the organizations that they work for to really understand what employees need, to listen to them, to understand, but also to make it more of that it should be a collaboration, right? That people should want to work for the people they work for, right? And the employers should be happy to have them. So feel valued. So that was kind of the start of it got me into my master's program in organization development. And the specific individual coaching came later because I was working for NASA on a contract. And when that contract ended, actually one of the groups I had worked for there liked what I had done so much, they hired me on a contract for another 7 years. And I really got to flex my consulting and coaching muscles because, I just got to do the things that I want to say the things that I wanted to do, but also the things that they needed. So I did a lot of individual coaching with particularly the civil servants that worked for the organization, the federal employees and others too, and the other contractors. And one of the things that happened since that contract ended was that I realized that coaching is not just one-on-one. It's not just one person. Coaching can be team coaching. So I feel like most of what I've done, my career has been coaching of a form. So That's my backstory.
Okay. I'm sorry to hear about your loss, and
Thank you.
in a way, how that hardship eventually put you into a path of impacting more people in a way that she shouldn't be impacted. Like she was out in the cold without the life insurance, right? And I think that's very powerful, and I appreciate you sharing that. Okay. And how that eventually drove you to help people out there, right? That's the mission side. Now, I want to understand, like, you that happened, and then you went to NASA, and then NASA eventually wanted to hire you on a contract base for another team. Okay. But when did it shift from I'm helping people to I'm building a real business around this? Is that tied to the contract with NASA, or is that like something that happens down the road?
Yeah, when I think that shift happened, the shift you're talking about, where it was really like building my own business. I mean, I have to take one
Hmm.
step back, because before I had the contract at NASA, I had my business then, and I did a lot of training with local organizations and nonprofits, and so I had the business. When I took the contract at NASA, I couldn't do my business, because that was full time. And only after that contract ended, I realized that I really needed to refocus, to really look at let me just be really honest. I wasn't really happy about those contracts ending,
Mm,
because when you have a nice contract and you're working and you're enjoying what you're doing, you really don't want that to end. But things happen. And
mhm,
one of the things that recently I was telling people is that, like, I really have made so many shifts in my life. I reinvented myself so many times because I was a stay-at-home mom. Then I went back to school, and then I started my own business, and I went to work on these wonderful contracts. And I've worked for IBM, for the IRS, for AT&T, NASA, so big organizations. And there were times when something would happen and it would be like, wow, this is really,
mm,
I don't want to say devastating, but, a real huge pothole in the road of life, right? And now what do you do, right? But
mm,
one of the things that I realized was that I've always been able to find the flowers in whatever's happening. I've always been able to say that I was trying to avoid the cliche of making lemonade from lemons, but you just have to. You just can't. What are you going to do otherwise?
yeah, sometimes cliches, they exist for a reason, right?
Well,
Because like
yeah,
at
they
the end
do.
of the
They
Yeah, they kind of explain it. Like, I see where you're coming from. And I want to understand one thing, right?
Mhm.
After you got rolling and you had those contracts, and also your practice, and sometimes like you lost a contract and then you're going to focus on your practice to an extent until you got a new contract, something like that. So, what I'm trying to understand is who are the people that kept showing up, for the Ardland Group? The ones you realize, okay, these are my people, my tribe. I can help most.
Well, a lot of it has to do with, just looking at the people that I went to school with, so the people that I was in my master's program. I recently just met with one of those people, and, just talking to them about how they have shifted their own life and how they've moved into different, I can't think of what the word is, but just, moving into a different era. We all have to do that. There's a funny story I like to tell is that when I was at NASA, they used to have all kinds of programs for us all the time. Even as contractors, they would put us through all kinds of training and certifications. And one of the programs they had was called Power and Privilege. And it was Power and Privilege Generations. So it was two day workshop, and they divided you up by your generation, and you talked about what were the advantages and the disadvantages. How do people view your generation in the workplace? And then we would hear the stories from the other generations, from Gen X and because I'm a baby boomer, so Gen X and Gen Z. And at the end of 2 days, the facilitator said, "So what's one takeaway you have from these 2 days that we've been together?" And of course I raised my hand because I'm an extrovert and I like to talk. So I said, "Wow," I said, "the one thing I learned over these 2 days is that I'm actually a millennial stuck in this baby boomer body." And, and I do have grandchildren, and and they're older, they're adults. And when I tell them that story, they're like, "Oh, Nanny, that's so you. That's just, because I never, it just wouldn't occur to me to just stay stuck in the way things are. I'm always looking for innovation. And, I'm going to say one of the things I love about other people is when they're very curious. And it was one of the great things about working at NASA, because when you work with scientists and you're not one, you just see like they're not put off by something that didn't work out the way they expected it to. They're like, "Okay, that wasn't what we were looking for. But that's something else. That's something new now. We found something new that we weren't expecting," and I try to take that into everything I do, is that like life gives me things I wasn't expecting, but that's a new path. That's a new way to look at things. That's a different way that you can, change not necessarily change yourself, but just adapt and adjust to what the world's giving you. Right.
Yeah, I can resonate with that. Like, I work at a city hall. Okay. So imagine flipping a switch is a political stance. Okay. It's like turning the AC heat down or up. It's like you need to always be careful what you're talking about or who you're saying stuff to. And that's exhausting, at least for me. And I do have a brother who's a PhD. And was talking. He was a scientist. And when I talk with him, sometimes we're just talking about the stuff we're talking about. There's no layers to it. It's like we want to solve X, Y, and Z. It's not about, am I going to affect Rebecca? Am I going to affect John? And all of those layers. And I understand where you're coming from. I mean, it at least depends on the person, but for me, that's exhausting. Having to peel off and be so very careful whenever you're just trying to solve stuff. I would say like that, now that's the coaching side, right? We're talking about people and how they and eventually your ideal client profile, right? And you talk with you networked with past colleagues and the masters you mentioned. Now, I want to understand the marketing aspect, right? So how do people usually find you, Nancy?
Yeah, people usually, it's usually word of mouth. Like people know me and they will, recommend me or refer me to a client. And then, I do have a website that, a coaching website. And that, people they go there. So when you talk about marketing, the only reason I'm hesitating is because it's definitely not the thing that I love to do. I don't love doing the marketing piece, but I love networking with people and I love being with people. So some of the things I've done is just, doing presentations at a SHRM conference or going out and, just talking to people about how I might be able to help them and offering like a free coaching session so they get some sense of who I am and, and just talk about, the things that are bothering them. And I try to, I've been working on LinkedIn. So like when I see people that I'm connected to on LinkedIn and they just got promoted or they just got a new job or they've been in a job, I'll actually message them and just say, "Hey, congratulations on the promotion or the new job. Would you like to talk about what the challenges you're going to face? You can come and have a complimentary coaching session just to get started, just to have a conversation." And that's the kind of marketing I like to do. I guess I would call it like it's tactile. Do you know what I mean? It's touch marketing. It's not massive marketing. And recently I heard this person on the radio talking about small businesses doing marketing. And they said, don't send out a lot of ads. What you need to do is tell a story, tell your story, that's
Mm.
how you attract people to want to work with you, because you show them, I can show people how I've overcome things, and I'm curious about where they're at and where they see themselves going.
Especially in the AI era, right? We're talking
Mhm.
about sometimes of trying to pinpoint, hey, am I talking to a bot? You know, is that is this a bot? And you're like, yeah, I think this is a bot. I'm gonna so when you show off your background, your story, and you really own it, like
Mhm.
you like been there, done that. I think people connect with that easier. That's just my experience. I think that guy in the radio or a gal, she nailed it, or he, I think that's true. It's not just about putting content out there. It's like meaningful content that is not being
Right.
perceived as AI or bland. Right now, I want to talk business for a second, Nancy.
Okay.
So imagine I'm one of the guys that's getting that tactile approach. Okay, on LinkedIn, let's say, and I resonate what you told me. I resonate with your work. And eventually, I want to know what working with you actually looks like, right? So when someone actually becomes a client, let's pretend it's me. What does
Okay.
that experience look like right now, from my perspective?
Wow, that's such a great question. So I think what it would look like for you is that I would be curious about where you're at, and I would want to know where you see yourself going. And it's more of so I'm not going to solve your problems, right? But I'm going to help you to figure out how to solve your problems by yourself. Because one of the things I know about people is that, I've raised 5 sons, and I have lots of things to tell them. I can give them all kinds of advice, but when I tell them what to do, then I own it, right? Whereas if we can talk about the pathway and how you're going to get to the next step, and what are the things you need to do, and what, similar to the questions you were asking me, like, who are the people that are going to help you? Like, who do you need in your circle of influence in order to achieve what you're trying to achieve, at that next level? And also, I think, one of the questions I always ask people too is, what brings you joy?
Mm,
And, because you're not going to work diligently and hard at something if it's not bringing you joy, right? So how can I help you to find where that joy is and where you can tap into it?
okay, I got it. Joy, I love that. Now, Nancy, your work seems pretty hands-on, right? We're talking about tactile marketing. We talk about the coaching and the coaching practice. You're also a business owner. So how
Yeah.
do you think about capacity? So you don't stretch yourself too thin,
How do I think about what I missed the
capacity, so you don't so don't stretch yourself too thin, because I see a lot of coaches out there, they're like, they're, first of all, sometimes they're wearing all the hats, right? And they're trying to do everything, the
Mhm.
admin side, the sales, the marketing. So that's always a challenge in the space that I like to address. So how do you think about that for other coaches listening?
Yeah, it's interesting because, one of the things I've been trying to do is to actually be with other coaches. And you think, like there was this networking group that I joined. At first I thought, wow, I need to talk to people, I'm networking with people. I need to talk to people who are going to hire me, right? I need to, bring in some revenue here. But then I realized that talking to the people who do the same work that I do is even more important, because, and I said that there's plenty of work for everyone. But if, for instance, when you talked about capacity, it may, it's something I say all the time. I was like, look, if I found a client that had, 100 employees that needed to have executive coaching, I can't coach 100 people.
Mm,
I mean, like, I would never sleep. It'd be 24/7, or, I mean, I don't even think it would be that. It's impossible. So I would want other people to be part of that, consortium, collective. I love the idea of being in a collective of people who are doing the same work and saying, look, I'm up against my capacity. I've got 3 other clients who are looking for a coach. Let me refer you to them or refer them to you. So that's how I would handle that.
So collaboration instead of competition. At the end of the day, I see it like scarcity mindset versus abundancy. It's like,
Mhm.
oh, I'm going to lose a client for Joe, who's also a coach, or I'm going to get a client that is so big that I might end up needing him,
Right,
to help me on the contract
right.
side. Right.
Or
Yeah.
Joe
I
might
love that.
do that and then wanna bring me in,
Exactly.
I mean,
Exactly.
it should be yeah, it was a number of years ago, there was this, person who did a presentation, and before that, whenever I would create something, when I would create some workshop or I would create something, I was very protective of it, like, "Oh, that's my intellectual property, I've gotta hold on to that." And then I went to this, workshop, and this person was just so generous and just like and he's like, "Oh, here, here's go online, download these slides, everything is, take all the," and I thought, wow, that changed me, Pedro. That changed my
Mm.
thinking about it because it's like you have to give it away to get it back.
Mm. Yeah. So it's not so transactional. It's the mindset.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, the people are going to steal my stuff. It's like, I'm going to help them eventually. Going to have a chat. This might,
Yeah.
be fruitful for the both of us. I love that. Now, Nancy,
Yeah.
let's talk about future. Okay. I'm
Okay.
curious where you're taking all this. Okay. Looking
Yes,
ahead,
we're all
where
right.
do you, s- where do you see the business going? Are you thinking about scaling, hiring, or is there a next step you're excited about?
Yes. I'm my next step is that I see myself in another, in the next year, being able to be at that place that I just talked about, being at that place where I have work that keeps me busy. I have work that now I could share with other people, have or vice versa, that those people, are working with me. And because one of the best things, I always keep going back to NASA because it was my favorite job, right? One of the best things about working there were the people that I worked with because we collaborated so well and we would brainstorm ideas about how we were going to approach a certain client in the organization or a certain issue that was happening and we developed it together, and it was never like, oh, well, Nancy designed this piece of it or, oh, Denise designed that piece. No, it was always, we were there together and we knew what where our strengths were and where our challenges were. And we worked towards those. So that's where
That's
I
when the
see
magic
myself.
happens.
Yeah. What?
That's when the magic happens. Like everyone's
It
working
was
towards a
kind
goal.
of magical, actually. It was kind of magical.
Okay. And whenever we're aiming towards the next chapter, always something we're refining in the present. So, what are
Mhm.
you currently trying to improve or tighten up in your business right now?
Yeah, I'm just trying to reach out to more people, and there's a number of like networking groups. There's one that's called Wine and Dine, but wine is spelled WHINE. And so, it's networking. And then yesterday I was speaking to a colleague and she and I were talking about, because she's kind of in a similar situation to me and she wants to network more too. And we talked about how to do that. And she gave me this new word. She said, instead of networking, let's call it net giving. And I was like,
Mm.
I love that idea. I love the idea of like, you're not going there to find work. I'm not going to this networking to find work, to get people to hire me. I'm going there to find people that I can connect with, that I can build more connections with.
Mm.
That's what I've been doing. There's a number of groups that I belong to that are really all about relationships and connecting. And you know what? Those are the things that bring me joy.
Back to alignment, right? We're talking about going to an event without the intention of turning into a transactional
Right.
situation. You
Right.
want to serve, and when you have that mentality, good things will happen, right? It's like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm there to connect. If this turns out to be a business, great. But if it's not, all good either way. Because if you go with that mentality, it's like a closing mentality. I'm going to sell this person. And sometimes that happens, that doesn't even make sense. And then you're making judgments based on what you want and not exactly what's the best for that
Right.
person. Did that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And, kind of going back to when we were talking about, that I can't coach 100 people. Well, all at the same time, right? But the other thing is that I'm not a fit for everybody. Do you know what I mean? Like I don't take it personally. It's like if someone's looking for, they're looking for someone that they can build a rapport with. So it has to be someone that can hear them, can understand them, can be in the place where they are, can have maybe even a similar situation. I can't be that for everybody. I can only be that for some of the people.
Yes. Okay. Advice time. I want to hear some advice. You've been in the game long enough, right?
Wow.
For all types of advice, good and bad, on the business side. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, what's one piece of business advice you hear all the time that you think that's overrated, or maybe misunderstood?
Wow. The first thing that came to my mind was don't take yourself so seriously. But there are things that you do need to take serious. Just don't take yourself so seriously. And I would also say what, kind of reiterating what I just said, don't take rejection personally. Yeah. Because you're going to have a lot of rejection.
It's just part of the business, right?
Yes. And you say, well, and learn from it. It's it's Eastern philosophy that says that there really are no mistakes. In Eastern philosophy, there's no word for mistake, right? Because everything is a learning opportunity. So regardless of what happens, that's why I say don't take yourself so seriously. Whatever happens, just learn from it.
I like that. Okay. And on the flip side,
Uh-huh.
what's a piece of advice you wish more people actually took seriously?
Just be you. I wish people would just be themselves and not try to be something that they're not, because, when that authenticity comes out, it's so powerful, right? It's just, that's who you are. Don't try to be somebody that you're not. And I have to say that to myself, Pedro, too.
That's true. That's beautiful. Okay, Nancy. And if someone listening wants to connect with you or follow your work, right? Where can people find you and connect with you?
Where can they connect with me? Well, they can, the best way to reach me really is through my email. If somebody emailed me, right? And maybe even like close to that is call me. Call me, text me, email me.
Here's the boomer, right? The boomer is always there. Okay. It's old school way of doing things, shaking hands, talking to people. I love that. Okay.
Yeah.
Nancy, some stuff you mentioned really resonated with me. I'm going to highlight them. Okay. I would say, first of all, how the organization failed your sister, how that put you in a track to help others, and how you owned it. Like you breeze through it like it was nothing, and at the same time it's part of who you are. You're not ignoring, it's part of who you are and how you want to help people in the future that failed your younger sister. So I commend you on that, because I think that's a key asset for true coaches, being vulnerable. Okay. More often than not, we ask a lot from the coachees, right? Making the hard questions and all of that. And it's only fair you do the same. So we do the same as coaches, right?
Right.
I thought it was wild that you're a millennial in a baby boomer body, right? I think that is so funny, but at the same time, so true, Nancy. I mean, you're so curious, right? And non-judgmental. Keep moving forwards. And I want to highlight the fact that you mentioned about don't take rejection personally, because I think that's such powerful advice. Because I worked in sales also, and I've talked with a lot of coaches, and then more often than not, they're like, yeah, it's just the sales part. I know it. Sometimes I'm salesy. I'm not sure if I'm doing, and people reject me. Well, first of all, rejection is just part of the business. If your true intention is to help, you need to go back to the root cause, which is the true intention, right? I want to help people. So rejection is a smile bump in the road to actually help someone. because
Right.
eventually you will. Out of those, I don't know how many calls, eventually you're going to find someone that you can actually help, and that will have a big payoff. Okay. And also, it's the framing, right? If you're salesy, of course, you're not going to feel right about it. It's just about you need to serve people on the sales aspect. Don't try to close them, try to help them. Like you're telling me how you connect with people, right? On that not given idea you gave. That's an interesting word. Also, when you told me you didn't join for marketing, well, I'm going to break it down for you, Nancy. You're not the first coach that didn't join for the marketing aspect. You're here to help people. It's to an end, right? Means to an
Right.
end. Marketing is part of the gig. I know it. Everyone knows it, but I get it. You don't have to love it. Sometimes we have to outsource it. Sometimes we need to get creative. But, well, that's just my long winded way of saying that I appreciate what you do. And I appreciate you being here and sharing so open today, Nancy. It was great having you on.
Thank you, Pedro.
That's it for this episode of Career Coaching Secrets. If you enjoyed this conversation, you can subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you're listening to this episode to catch future episodes. This podcast was brought to you by Purple Circle, where we help career coaches scale their business to $100,000 years, $100,000 months, or even $100,000 weeks, all without burning out and making sure that you're making the impact and having the life that you want. To learn more about our community and how we can help you, visit joinpurplecircle.com.